Good friends, I'm Joel Chazen. For many years, and many happy years, I was at Montefiore as the rabbi and chaplain. Knew Saul, came to know Saul. Everybody loved Saul, came to know him well. And it's my honor to serve you and to serve Saul's dear family. Above all, Saul was a righteous man. And I'll share this psalm. Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide by your holy mountain? He or she who lives with integrity, does what is right, speaks the truth, who has no slander of others, does no evil, does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes, a vile person is despised, but he honors those who honor people and who honor the Lord. He takes an oath even to his own harm, but will not change. Whoever does these things will stand forever. Saul Shack, as you came to know him, as I have come to know him, was an unbelievable man of many talents. You might call him a Renaissance man, if you like. A man of many talents. He was a businessman, a business manager for years after his marriage for Neisner Brothers, a five and dime at that time, five and dime outlet. And he was dispatched as a business manager elsewhere. He was a successful insurance agent. And he had happy years at Globe Assurance. I've had that in my notes. And his happiest years was when he married Anita Winograd, spent or lived with her as long as she lived, virtually 57 and a half years, almost 58 years. She died, sadly, in the year 2000. And what else? A man who could dance and sing, who loved to entertain others, a man who loved to share, a man who loved to put a smile on other people's faces. Written up in the Plain Dealer a few times and in the Cleveland Jewish News as well. He turned to community service before Anita's death, but especially after. She died in 2000. And the Plain Dealer, he caught the attention of the Plain Dealer. So in 2010, the Plain Dealer had a lovely article on him when he was 90, but full of energy. I'm in, let's say, about 80. I don't think I will ever have the energy that Saul had. So, again, his pleasure was in helping others and in putting a smile on their faces. So in the Plain Dealer, I'll read briefly, he approached a woman very disabled because of Alzheimer's. She never cracked a smile, never said a word. So he approached her. This is 2010. He was 90, as I said. And he got very close to her face and then began to sing to her. When you're smiling, as you know the words, the whole world smiles with you. And when you're laughing, the sun shines through. Would you believe she looked at him for a while and then smiled? Her lips open and she smiled. Unbelievable that someone broke through to her. So this was 2010, but he was even yet more honored the following year in 2011. He was nominated or named as Volunteer of the Century. Unfortunately, I couldn't retrieve the article in the Plain Dealer. I'm not as capable, not as technical as I should be. And this was an honor bestowed on him by the state of Ohio, along with possibly a few others, and it lifted his spirits tremendously. And he became the talk of Montefiore. He lived at Montefiore right until this past Sunday, January 5th. He died this past Sunday, just a few months short of 100 years. Amazing. And his brothers were long-lived as well. They also had long lives. So he had a great zest for life, a great feeling for people. He loved to share who he was, tell stories, true stories, about himself or about life. He danced right after during the many years they were married, he and Anita, they took up ballroom dancing, and after that, they were fabulous. Often they danced in a crowd of people. It was, nice music and so on. And they were so capable and so graceful that the people around them stopped just to watch them perform. And again, he had such exuberance that he told me of his dancing. He loved to dance everywhere. This was after Anita's death. You can hear me okay? And of course, he was a widower at this time. But, he was surrounded by women who would, of course, at times danced with him, loved to dance with him, loved to get a little closer to him. He made it clear his one love was Anita. He was unattached at this point and no desire to share any other companionship. In that way, very faithful to her memory and to his wonderful years with her. Loved to dance everywhere. He shared with me, and I'm sure with yourselves, his love of life, his love of people, and his deep love to help others, his deep love of service, his deep gratitude just from relating to others and his family, of course, and the good feelings, the nachas, you might add, that came from his love of people. Saul was born June 3rd, 1920. At that point, he was the youngest of 4 brothers. The older brothers sadly have passed. Herman, who was, I think, significantly older than Saul, and then a brother Saul, S-A-U-L, and often they got mixed up their names, and the youngest, and then just above Saul was again a deceased brother, Michael. Each of these brothers, if any of you are related, really were outstanding men in their own right. And they led lives of decency and uprightness. And we and the family value the times that they lived and value their memories. Again, he was the youngest of 4, born to Esther Gellis. And sadly, each has gone to the better world. Each was outstanding. And they were, again, Herman, Saul, and Michael. In the beginning years, Esther had an extremely difficult time as a mother and as a wife. Her husband, whom I'm not going to name, the father of the boys, deserted Esther and his family several times. Deserted them, came back, deserted them again. Finally, when Saul was 9, this husband left the family for the last time, did not return. Esther was penniless. Those were tough times. It was the years of depression. He left in 1929 just when the country was on the verge of depression and never returned. So when Saul was 9 and the brothers were somewhat older, he and his brothers had to be placed in foster care, I assume with Jewish families. 2 brothers were in a fortunate foster home, but Saul and his brother Chip, what was the brother in foster care with him? Michael. But he and Michael had the misfortune to be in a Jewish family, foster family, that were rejecting, even brutal, and these were terrible years, 3 terrible years that Saul endured, and which of course left a bitter mark upon his soul. This was a part of his life that he only could share to his family. We never saw it. So it took 3 years, and then the boys were reunited with their mother, and he talks of his mother as of Esther, as a loving woman who lived for her sons, lived for the boys. And so this was really a miserable time of rejection and so on that he had to experience. Nevertheless, at the age of 12, reunited with the family. Continued in school. He completed Glenville High School. That must have been 1938 or 39. And he was probably already working to help the family household. in July 7th of 1941, he enlisted himself in the American Army, in the military. And he was proud to tell me this was several months before Pearl Harbor. So here's a man, poor family, good brothers who had a strong ties to each other. And he goes into the Army. He's about 20 and a half, 21, and serves 4.5 years. A year after he began military service, he met and married Anita. This was December 16th of 1942. He had been in the service about a year and a half, stayed in service, and after the war, or even before the war, he and Anita began their family. Her original name was Winograd, and for a time he was in business with her mother, Lila Winograd, a very capable woman in business and in bookkeeping. And Chip has shared with me happy years for a time. He did so many things. He worked for Neisner Brothers, a 5 and dime, a 5 and 10 cent store outlet. They dispatched him to Wilkes-Barre, Detroit, Chicago. He went everywhere for that company. Later, he was in business with Lila and an Izzy Presser, and he operated a beer and wine parlor, a beer and wine tavern, but with a fountain service up front, kind of serving milkshakes and sodas, but then in the back serving stronger stuff. And those were happy years, as Chip has relayed to me. His greatest years of happiness began and lasted with Anita and with the birth of their children, of he and Anita's children, Chip, Art, and Risa, his wife, and a younger son, Brian, who very sadly died some months ago of leukemia. And his widow resides now in California, could not make the trip here. He and Anita were fabulous dancers, as I've mentioned, literally performing for others. Anita was a very successful interior designer, often for Forest City, and the family has shared that after her death, some literally 19 years ago, he was never the same. But he showed us an exuberance for life that I certainly would never have known. After her passing in 2000, he devoted himself totally to dancing and having fun and to service to others. And in 2010, he was honored by the Plain Dealer, or nominated by several organizations, and 2011, the beautiful honor of being Volunteer of the Century. Sometimes people said disparagingly, oh, he kind of lived off Anita's income. Not true. He worked hard all his life, whether for Neisner, whether for the insurance company, but he worked hard alongside of Anita. He was virtually her partner, kept the business records, served her full time, and in every way participated in her earnings. He leaves a loving and devoted family, nieces and nephews, grandnieces and grandnephews. Some of you may be here in that role, and we respect your presence here. The list of survivors is detailed. Pray for me that I get it right. So he leaves his eldest daughter, his eldest child, Esther Sareen, we know as Chip. And Esther was married to the late Myron Rudolph, or Mike Rudolph. And he leaves a son, Art, married to Risa, and living near Columbus, and a son, Brian, now deceased, but who resided in California. Here are the names that I have. He leaves in his immediate family Esther Rudolph, late husband Mike, and also her son, grandson Michael, who is here, married to Hillary, and they resided in Austin, Texas. Granddaughter, now these are Michael's children, Raiden Rudolph, also in Austin, and a grandson or son to Michael of Dalton James. And again, daughter Michelle, I'm sorry to hesitate a bit. I'm working through, my memory is faulty. Michelle, you're residing in Las Vegas, and you're like your mom in a lot of ways, a very hard-working businesswoman, successful businesswoman, married to Casey, and your children in turn, your sons in turn, are Justin and Tanner. I hope I got that pretty correctly. Arthur and Risa also have a son, Brett, married to Heather, and then great-grandchildren to, or children to Brett and Heather. I'm sorry. A great-grandson, Stone. So this is Brett and Heather's son, Stone. Daughter, Brittany. And Brittany has a partner, Ashley. And Stone. Is Stone single? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Stone is a small boy at this time. He also leaves, sadly, a son, Brian, now deceased, just recently deceased, leaving Nancy, but also a son, Garrett Lubarsky, and a grandchild, great-grandsons, Corey, Brandon, Matthew, and Zachary. Am I correct there? Hopefully. Okay. And also a grandson, Lance Lubarsky, and they're married to Johanna, and a great granddaughter, Eloise Lubarsky. A large family. So Saul was a man of infinite energy, infinite decency, and kindness. And he made all his life, or certainly the years I knew him at Montefiore, a tremendous impression. And it's only truthful to say everyone at Montefiore loved him. It's amazing how long he lived. He was a man of infinite energy who exhibited, again, a love of life, a zest for life, making hundreds of friends and adoring friends. He walked and danced this earth and made the world a better place. Very impressive, and I offer my sincere wishes to Chip and Michael and Michelle and other family members who are here, Art and Risa. Esther or Chip have said to me that she wants the microphone to be open. If there is anyone here who knew Saul, who'd like to share a bit about Saul briefly or as succinctly as possible, this microphone is open to you, and you're welcome to come forward. Sure, please come up. Josie, oh, sweetheart. This is, come all the way up. This is a wonderful lady, virtually lifetime worker in the activities department, enrichment department at Montefiore. She'll be singing for us, herself a singer, on Martin Luther King Day in just a short time. Josie Love.
Yes, hi. Yes, I work with Saul at Montefiore. I love Saul. We had a very, very good relationship. As it's been said, yeah, he loved to sing, he loved to dance. We all knew that. But his heart was always in the right place. It didn't matter like what capacity you were in. He was always there to give you a word of encouragement and just to say, how much he loved, everyone. I always had a relationship with him because he had been volunteering at Montefiore for so many years, and I've been there for 31 years. So all the years that Saul had volunteered at Montefiore, I had been there and I had known him. I saw him come, I saw him go. I know when Saul was living at Geiger's apartment, he would walk across the parking lot from the apartment down to Montefiore in the snow. And I'm like, well, how did you get here? And he said, I walked. And I'm just like, I just know you didn't walk. And sure enough, one day I had the nerve to follow him and see that he had walked from his apartment down those snowy steps in the snow, which I rimmed him out for that because it was just so dangerous for him to have to come like that and walk through the snow. But he was so determined to get to Montefiore no matter what it took for him to get there. And we always had a saying, I love you. And he would always, even in the last weeks, a month or so, he would be in the hallway yelling, I love Josie Love. And I would always, if I would hear him, I'm like, I love Saul Shack. And I meant that from my heart because I felt that from his heart. So just know that I know I will miss him because I enjoyed seeing him and just the energy that he did bring to Montefiore and being there and representing everyone that was a great dancer and a great singer because no one could do it like he could because he was the best at it. And I thank you. Mhm.
Thank you, Joseph.
Mhm.
Well, can you imagine in his 90s or late 80s, he's walking through the snow to get to Montefiore to volunteer, to really put a smile on and give his love to others. Anyone else would like to share? Chip, you're a great lady. Please come up. And Chip herself is an active businesswoman in the Los Angeles area.
I really wasn't planning to do this today because I didn't really think I could be up to it. And there's been a little dramatic license here today, which is okay. Everybody sees and hears things in their own way. I'm happy to see that the all four Shack families are represented here today. The Jacoby family from my mother's side, and Sandy and Marty Getz are here, and Ray Burnsweig is here. They're the Getz's father and Raymond's cousin Herbie and their spouses went on the first date with my parents. They triple dated for close to 60 years. And the fact that as the next generation, our children and our children's children have been able to maintain a relationship in spite of being in, 6 or 7 different states. The Kleinman adjunct, Flo Getz' sister, was married to a Kleinman. There were 4 Kleinman brothers, just like 4 Shack brothers, and my father was often considered the 5th Kleinman. So we have 2 of the Kleinman brothers represented here today, and you just have to know that some people, they move away, they go wherever their job takes them or their interests or whatever, and that's where they go. There are those of us who, no matter where we are and no matter where the other party is, we maintain relationships. And I've got a couple people here, somebody I've known since junior high school. It just, the relationships go on and on and on. A cousin of Mike's, I'm very grateful for those of you being here. My father was a difficult man. I know, a handful of you know, that what the rest of the world saw was not who he really was. I have a dear aunt and uncle who used to live in East Cleveland, and when they sold their house, they moved into the Mark IV, which became the Hamptons, which now I know is something else. But when they moved in, they were special to me because they used to come to California. So they were one of the few relatives I got to see both in Cleveland and in my part of the country. And I don't know, after about 6 months or a year, whatever, my aunt is in one time, she says, "What's wrong with your father?" And I go, "What do you mean?" "He's so angry. I said, "Yeah, he's always been like that." But they didn't see it until they were with him on a daily basis. The man who named me Chip, when we used to talk and I would say how much I was like my father, "You're nothing like your father." I said, "You don't know. You don't understand. I'd go to that same black hole he'd go to." I had a cousin who yelled at me, "What, are you only 15% your mother?" I said, "Yeah, that's about right, But whatever he was, whatever he did, whatever he didn't do, whatever he couldn't become, he was a man who lived to the best of his ability with the scar tissue that he had. And I don't mean that to make excuses. I don't mean to let him off the hook for the things that he's done. Without my mother, he had no filter, and many of you were recipients of comments that should never have been made, but they were made with love. Richard, when your dad died, he was very distraught. And I think anybody who started to gain a lot of weight, he would be on their case. He wasn't mean. He wasn't trying to be arrogant about fancy looks. He didn't want to hurt the way he hurt when Herman died. But he doesn't tell you that part. He doesn't do it that part. He just makes you feel like shit. And it was hard for some of my cousins, for some of my friends. And I see front row shaking their head, that's right, you know. So I knew who he was. I didn't live in a dream world. But he was who he was. He did what he could. He didn't do what he didn't do. And I will miss him. I can get mad at him just like my mother did for some of the same things. You can't talk like that. They know it's me. It's okay. It's like he thought, my Aunt Arlene, I just talked to, I was in Israel about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and we were talking, but he just didn't think the rules applied to him. Always felt that way, and he always will. Yeah, that's true. He just, and it wasn't that he felt superior from my point of view as much as you should know it's him and it's okay that he said it. Well, it wasn't okay, but many people forgave him. I think Josie has a perfect example of seeing the outside public version of who this man was. Erica, he was really happy about Justin's wedding, and several times over the last couple years. He was very excited because Justin apparently must have thanked him over and over that night from his point of view. He thanked me 3 times, and he must have really been happy that I was there. Well, he's being nice, you know. So when I told him there was a baby, this drab man who was getting weaker and weaker, his eyes opened wide. Really? No kidding. And the same with Avital's new baby. Whatever I could get to him that he could recognize and hear, it always mattered. Your happiness, your joy, your love, your good health. He was tired. He just was who he was, and I can't say much more because it's too difficult. It's just too difficult. One last thing. My husband said a lot of outrageous things. And Jesus Christ, Mike, what's the matter? Then he met his parents, and they left, and he came to Mike and he said, I forgive you for everything. So he was tuned in his own way to who was what and what was related. He came to your wedding right after my mother died. I couldn't get him to do anything for me, but he did it for you. He helped you pass the C test. I'm talking to Sandra Getz-Puckett. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, anyway, so come tell them. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chip, for your heartfelt words and your heartfelt honesty. Please tell me your name.
Sandra Getz.
Sandra Getz, a dear friend.
Yes, I came from Portland, Oregon today. I told my friends I'm going to a friend's funeral. They said, are you out of your mind? I said, look, you don't understand. This man was like my second dad. He named me Blue Eyes after my dad, who went to junior high school with Saul. That's how far they went back. And they all went on a trip together to Israel, and he was fabulous. And I freaked out when he came to my wedding in California. I've lived all over, the wandering Jew that I am. But when he came to my wedding and danced there, I was so excited. So I just loved him, and my full family did. My brother Marty and Barry, and I'm sorry Barry couldn't be here today, but I'll really miss him. And I used to call him, and every time I came in here, I would see him because I was on the West Coast for 25 years. But but I loved him, just like a second dad to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Sandra.
Sandra, what junior high did he go to?
Glenville.
Also Glenville.
Glenville. Oh, was it? The high school in Glenville. I haven't been here for 50 years, so I don't remember the high school. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The junior high.
Sure, please come up and tell us your name, and we're delighted to have you speak.
My name is Michael Getz. I'm a cousin of Sandy. And I've seen, and Marty also, and Barry. I've seen Flo and Al and Anita and Saul dance many times. And it's true. People would just stop and watch them because they were so amazing. But I have two South Shack stories. And I wasn't planning on telling them, but since Sandy came up, I thought I would. Thank you. Can everybody hear me? I thought that Sal was my father's friend originally. I didn't realize he was Al's friend. And Sal used to come over our house on Bexley, and across the street, we had an empty field. And so they used to hit golf balls into the empty field. And one day I came home, and my mom goes, "Your dad's in the hospital." And I said, "What happened?" And she goes, "Well, Sal and your dad were golfing, and your father stood behind Sal and got hit in the jaw and got knocked out." And she goes, "He's the only person that's ever knocked Jerry out." The second story was right after my father died. And I just found this out yesterday from my sister. On New Year's Eve, Saul came to the house and wanted to take my mother out for New Year's because he didn't want her to spend New Year's alone. And at first she wouldn't go, and then I found out she went out with him and she had a good time, and that was really nice of him. That's it.
Thank you very much to the Getz family, and it's impressive for anyone to have dear friends for a lifetime, literally a lifetime. The grandson, Michael, please come up.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Michael is Chip's son.
Though I'd like to say thank you for everybody coming, supporting the family. Michelle and I are here, obviously supporting the family as well. And some of the stories with my grandfather with being in the military, it's not something I really remembered at all. You know, I was in the military. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. So I had to speak on behalf of my grandfather, and as the soldier he was. As an adopted child as well, my mom picked my sister and I at a very young age. And for probably 12 years, I was 6, so 12 years after that, it was very difficult to connect with family. Very, very difficult. I'm 51 now, and I barely can do it at all. I haven't been back to Cleveland here probably since I was rolling in that park across the street at Kane Park just to roll and have fun. And really, that's all I remember because I think as a child, I checked out. I really did. And I still may be checked out now, but I'm surely going to give my grandfather the respect he deserves to speak with him, about him. I was a kid, 9 maybe. I took a shower in the apartment, and I had no idea that one of the shower curtains, one went outside, one went inside. And I took a shower, and I probably took a long shower, and both of them were outside of the tub. So when you get out, there's water everywhere. I didn't care, but to a parent, grandparent, he went ballistic, and I remember that. Unfortunately and fortunately, that's what I remember. I remember him screaming at me for that. However, it all kind of makes sense because that's love. As much as you may disagree, but that's 100% love. And my mom picked me. Well, he made my mom, so I support him and love him dearly. And I want to apologize to Grandpa Saul for getting that wet. I didn't know any better, and I really, really didn't. And I'm sure he forgave me long and long ago. But I also want to apologize too that I didn't spend more time here with him while I was trying to connect with my family. I know, as I try to figure myself out in my later years, I know why I was the way I was, and surely I have met a lot of you, and I apologize, one, if I can't remember, and two, you got to remember what kid you were talking to when he was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I cared about one thing, and that was survival. And hearing the story about Grandpa Saul as a young kid going to being adopted and foster parents, oh yeah, we can go into as much abuse that we received as well. And it's a disconnect you receive in it, and you go into survival mode. So, Grandpa is Grandpa. We can't change our family. We can pick our friends. We can't pick our family. I love all y'all. I love my mom, my sister, all her friends that are so special to her. And I couldn't leave here today without at least coming to grips for my own life as I go forward to be a better person. So I'll be presenting the flag to my mom in as much military prowess as I can do, and I'm very proud to be able to present the flag to my mother. So thanks again for everybody. Rabbi, thank you.
And thank you, Michael. And I really want to thank each of the people who spoke, each of the speakers, for heartfelt words. In Michael's case, forgiving words. And you've certainly added a great deal to our tribute. In the Jewish tradition, I'd like you all to rise. Just a word. From here, bundle up, and we proceed to the Park Synagogue's cemetery, known as Beit Olam, literally the eternal home, the eternal house. And from there, we go to a lovely bed and breakfast on Linfield. And I did write the address down. But all right, Chip, you help me. What's the exact address on Linfield? 3460 Linfield in Shaker Heights. I'm sure the family can give you precise directions. We'll go there. After the cemetery is a kind of shiva, a kind of family gathering, friend gathering, again, in memory of Saul. The prayer is entitled, God full of mercy, El Malei Rachamim. And Saul's Jewish name, we're going to simply honor his mother, Shlomo ben Esther. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim. Hamse menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malos kedoshim u'tohorim, kezoraki amazhirim et nishmas, Shlomo Solomon ben Esther, shehalach liolamo, began eden tehe menuchaso, Anabal harachamim, hastirehu b'seita kenafecha leolamim, b'titzror b'tzor hachayim es nishmaso, Adonai, Adonai, hu nachlaso, v'yanuach b'shalom mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. O God exalted and full of mercy, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure who have gone before, to the pure soul of Saul Shack, who has gone to his eternal home. And dear God, Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the hundreds, thousands of worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life, and may he rest in peace. Amen. Amen. Anyone who was selected to be a pallbearer, please come forward. Be sure to bundle yourself up, and then we proceed to the Beit Olam Cemetery.